LBR LBO Infrastructure Summit
I'm
2016.
going to start the question time by inviting Mr. Jagat Munasinghe, who's immediately to my right, and we didn't give him time to speak. He's an academic involved in urban planning and has recently taken over as the chairman of the Urban Development Authority. So I'm going to, we've heard Nayana talk about the physical infrastructure and how it's going to be transformed. We've heard Muhundan tell us that there is a virtual infrastructure layer that's going to be built on top. I'm going to suggest there's another layer of infrastructure, which I would say is not the hard infrastructure of the physical infrastructure, but the soft infrastructure. The institutions, the systems that actually run things and make them work. I think Mr. Ranatunga alluded to them when he said we need all sorts of institutions and systems. Mr. Munasinghe, what do you see as the transformation that's needed within the government, within the institutions? What is the vision for that transformation that we have that can sustain something like a megapolis?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. The question, not a kind of a very easy question to answer, but the soft infrastructure. I believe that it can have many kind of different implications. Of course, soft infrastructure can be, first of all, it can be kind of institutional, and at the same time, it can be spiritual as well. Sometimes it can be something that is more kind of not understood kind of a mysterious kind of an infrastructure that we still have not seen about. Okay. Now, to talk about what is the kind of transformation, the question is what is the kind of transformation that we see in terms of institutions and in terms of soft infrastructure. I believe that if you look at the laws and whatever the institutional framework that's available in Sri Lanka, I believe that we have more than enough, right? More than enough that is required for transformation. We have enough number of statutes, we have enough number of legislative framework, we have enough number of institutions, those who work in different subject areas. So what is required actually is to kind of an integration, and that I believe is the real transformation. If we can make some effort to bring all these institutions together into one forum and to make use of whatever the kind of potentials available in each of these legislative the items that we have, I believe that we can do a lot more than what we do now, right? So this megapolis may not be a dream if we really make use of whatever the provisions that's available in the given laws that's available with us. Maybe there are certain changes required here and there. In fact, one of the things that is asked here is, I believe, is about this information. In fact, the Moondan was talking about this soft infrastructure, digital economy, and the kind of things that is related to this kind of transformation. And if we talk about this, the transformation, actually now we all talk about the smart city, but what is a smart city? Is it something to do with big kind of digital infrastructure? Is it something to do with this kind of all kind of gimmicks that we talk about? Or isn't it something, the key element in a smart city, I believe, is information. So our life is made difficult because we don't have information. That's the real reality of it. So if we have all this information at our fingertip, what time is the bus coming, what is the price of the kind of any good that's available in the market, where is the person available, and from which place that we can get our approvals done, all these things are at our fingertip. Of course, I believe that we are smart enough. Right? For that, we don't need all kind of gimmicks and all kind of the technology that is required. But there must be a way for us to kind of get into that situation, right? So the soft infrastructure, I believe, the real transformation is required, not only in terms of the physical element, not only in terms of digital elements, but also in terms of the way that we behave, the way that we kind of get information, the way that we try to achieve information. So I don't know whether I have given the kind of right answer, but the participation, the people's involvement, and the awareness, and all these things part of this soft infrastructure that we talk about. I believe that's...
Thank you, Jagat. So you're saying information is the critical and key element in releasing the public's ability to live a better life, okay? Muhundan, I have a question for you. All these things that you're talking about, smart, virtual, highly connected people and infrastructure, why does it need the megapolis? What about the megapolis becomes the source for releasing it? And is it not possible to do all this whether or not you have a megapolis?
You know, when you build a smart city, I mean, some would consider these as fantastic names across. But what happens is when you build these cities and its newer developments, you actually make sure that entirely the design concepts and the architecture and the entire engineering that goes behind it is also with a lot of digital devices which can actually feed information back to a data source. Now, for argument's sake, a bus stand, which basically has how many people are there, right? You can actually get even the number of people from your mobile phone from the location you are. But your refrigerator, there are smart refrigerators, smart washing machines, there are smart TVs, there's a wide variety and lighting and all these things. Now, but all these have actually very carefully thought and put into these developments. But if you take a traditional entire normal city, then you start putting these in isolation, and then trying to get meaningful outputs from these data becomes a little bit more harder. And then it is also those environments are not geared to actually have lots of devices because they have existing traditional infrastructure which cannot be replaced. If I just say, can I know the total power consumption from this lamp here, I would not be able to do it. But the newer set of infrastructure would actually have those type of things. It would give you which lamps are on, is there a person in it? No. So that way you actually bring in a lot of benefit to the economies and bring down the cost, where it's actually beneficial for the person who is living to actually have much better lifestyle at a lower cost. So that would be the final aspect of it between these two areas.
So I can see how lower costs, more data, more analysis, can be made available. But if I moved on, because I don't want to push you too hard on that, and asked Naina Muhundan described, a vision of just sitting in some place and using your mobile phone, never going to a lawyer, never going to a bank, never having to interact with a government office. I suddenly remembered reading as a teenager Arthur C. Clarke's Fountain of Paradise, which was actually set in Sri Lanka and had monks operating in high-tech caves and having all the services and everything they wanted delivered to them. Why do you need a megapolis if you have that kind of technology? So there seems to be a difference in this vision that allows you to locate yourself in the moon and transact all your business, and this vision for bringing people together in a megapolis. How do you respond to that?
Humans are communal animals. Okay, so yes, there's this aspiration of, we're so connected, we can do a lot of what we do from home. But I think what that does is unleashes a completely different level of productivity. The amount we spend on the road, going back and forth, trying to get stuff done is reduced, which can then be moved in towards kind of producing more or generating more revenue or more kind of output for the country, or also more social and family time as well. So I think it's very clear that in country after country, you see the agglomeration of people and urbanization is very strongly correlated with economic growth. It's very, very clear. So I don't think that trend is necessarily going to change simply because populations are rising. Environments are getting degraded. We need to kind of manage these environmental issues. And I think a concentration of people is inevitably happening. And it's a question of the megapolis is really, to be clear, it's not about putting everybody in a concrete jungle. It's really about managing this growth in a way that we still are left with livable, nice kind of communities and cities. So I don't think it's...
That's fine. Mohandan, did you want to respond to that? And Harsha, I'm coming back to you.
The entire aspect of it is for the evolution of mankind. That's the reality. So you have one side, you have the digital, which takes away, and whatever you're traditionally doing, monotonous takes it away, gives you more time for you to better think, create new products, and for the evolution of mankind. And that's how history and mankind has progressed. And I think it's our duty, being in government, to make sure that the next generation can actually keep evolving so the world would be a better place.
See, I think I heard Harsha talk about, how we can transform ourselves, become the gateway to Asia, and reposition Sri Lanka. I heard Nayana give a grand vision of how the city can be transformed. We heard about how businesses can be transformed. Listening to, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Sri Lankan products, there's something called Siddha Lepa, which is a balm that apparently we can use to cure all ills. So is a megapolis a kind of a Siddha Lepa, right? That we are imagining that once this comes, it'll solve all our problems, and we are just waiting for this megapolis to turn up and be the solution, whereas we know that we have enormous number of problems. Yes, Harsha, it's for you. Enormous number of problems that are solvable, that are unsolved. And Mr. Jagat Munasinghe, I'm afraid you didn't tell me why we have all these institutional problems that are yet unsolved, and why we must wait for the megapolis to solve it. Can we have a vision that's not just about megapolis, but what is it that will make us able to solve problems?
I mean, megapolis is not going to solve the problems that we have with liberalization of trade. Megapolis is not going to solve the problems that we have in getting a kid into grade 1 in a public school. Megapolis is not going to help the problems that we have in hospitals with, and drugs and all of that. Megapolis will solve some problems that we have, but the grand scheme of things, what we need to do is what people have been telling us, people who know the subject of economics particularly, that we have to become a competitive player. We have to become competitive. What Ranil Wickremesinghe has said before the election is that we want to create a knowledge-based, highly competitive social market economy. That is what we told the people that we want to do, and we asked the people for their mandate. And they gave us a mandate twice over, and that is what we are going to do. So if you really break it down, knowledge-based, Mundan was talking about that, and we heard many things that are happening. Digital infrastructure improvements everywhere, from the classroom to the institution that provides government services to citizens. Highly competitive, right? Highly competitive means, like Razin said that they have a bonfire of all these para-tariffs, cessors and all of that. Do what we need to do, the institutional changes, the way we bring stuff into this country to the port, the customs issues, right? And how did tariffs on certain HS codes for industrial products go up from 10% to 20%? The customs duties stayed the same, but the total protection rate went from 10 to 20%. So if you are increasing your total protection rate from 10 to 20% in 15 years or 10 years, then how are you going to start to trade? The megapolis is not going to solve that problem. That problem has to be solved right here. We have to have people who understand that the megapolis or the port city is going to be a piece of unused buildings if we can't get our economy going. Right? And Samantha, being the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, made some remarks that he said numerous problems exist. So how do we become competitive? Right? I mean, are we going to let people say, look, we are not going to let you liberalize higher education in this country? Are we going to be held hostage by these people? How are we going to become competitive? Right? Are we going to let everybody migrate to Australia and New Zealand and England and the United States? I mean, these problems will not be solved by the megapolis. These problems will be solved by people who are able to think and are bold enough to take the steps that are required. Right? And then in trade, however much people are saying, don't do free trade agreements. I mean, are we going to just say, okay, fine, because he says so, we will not do it because it is going to be detrimental for us at the election? That if we do a free trade agreement with India and China and Pakistan and Singapore and Turkey, and we want to accede to the TPP, we have to do certain things that perhaps are not very popular, but we have to do it. So the mega policy is only one piece of this beautiful jigsaw puzzle that we are trying to create.
So Harsha, what I'm hearing from you is that the megapolis is not just a project, but it's a mindset. That we are changing the way we think about development and Sri Lanka's future, and megapolis is one side of what that change looks like, but there's a lot of other facets to that change that you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess in a way I can't think of a building as a state of mind, but I guess that the megapolis fits into the bigger plan. So if you are to be competitive, the government, we have to ensure that we liberalize, that we globalize, right? And then once we do that, when people come, they'll have to have these buildings, these smart cities, livable places, golf courses, whatever it is that you need to attract the talent like it happened centuries before that. One point I want to stress is the other part of this phrase is a social market economy. And that is very important, and that is to bring employees into this equation. The employee, we always talk about the employer, but unless we have satisfied people who enjoy doing the work, not just in the government sector, but overall, then we can look to productivity enhancements, improved efficiency. So all of that taken together, hopefully, will make this transformation.
Thank you, Harsha. Nayan, I want to ask you a question that might challenge Harsha's view of things a little. Okay, politicians have sold us this story before. They built Mattala, they built Hambantota, and said these are going to transform the country. We were told that casino strips and night races will bring in tourism and bring in development. So is Harsha's vision, political vision, another vision like that is selling us a dream? Or what is it that makes this a dream we can believe in? Okay, so as someone who's coming from academia, who's thought through this, I want you to critically assess. Not that we don't accept Harsha's perspective, but seriously, people need to understand why should they believe it this time, and how would you respond to that question?
No, I think it's a very good question. I think the core thing to think about is really stop and think about what is it we are trying to do. Now, I won't talk too much of the past, but what we are trying to do is go into the most vibrant, bustling settlement in the country, the capital city, and the capital region, a region of 5.8 million people, the largest agglomeration of people in the country, and optimize that. This is where people live. And if our target is to make lives better, we need to intervene where people live. That's the fundamental difference between that and, for example, the Hambantota strategy. If you look at, for example, I mean, there's this image that floats around, which is very good, of night light imagery of where people live in Sri Lanka. There's not many people in Hambantota, and that was the catalytic flaw. At the end of the day, you have to respond to demand. So intervening in the megapolis, the megapolis really makes sense because it is the primary hub of human habitation in this country. And the idea is take that bull by the horns, really deal with it, really structure it, plan for it to grow, but don't really think of that as the end all be all. And I agree with Harsha in that point that, look, the megapolis is just one piece of a much broader kind of economic transformation strategy. To me, the megapolis is simply a canvas. The painting of economic transformation will have a combination of trade liberalization, institution building, kind of social interventions, and a whole bunch of other things that need to happen. But the megapolis is really about putting a canvas out there that this painting can be painted on.
Thank you. Nana, I'm going to ask Jagat to respond to something you said earlier. You talked about how the megapolis's vision is not just about serving the rich, but also all strata of society. There are questions from the audience on this as well, and one person's even asked, well, is it only the rich businesses that succeed in the megapolis? And there has always been that suspicion in Sri Lanka, right, that when you develop Colombo, that it is those who are already ahead of the game, already large, already well-equipped, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, those businesses that succeed, and not the small businesses, not the small guys, not the urban poor. Harsha reminded us that, Parakrama Bahu did something great for everybody, but 12,000 people didn't enjoy it so much for 30 years, okay? So does the megapolis have its victims in the urban poor? Or what is the vision for ensuring that it's not just benefiting those who are better off, but that it's benefiting across strata of society?
Okay, to answer this question, let me tell this one before, that there's a kind of a, if you look at this Buddhist literature, there's a kind of story, that's Jataka story, in which somebody says, I believe that one of these deities that says to a poor man that, okay, Magasitiyot tonasi, Gedarigiyot ambunasi. That means if you remain on your way, you are going to die, but if you go home, your wife will die, right? This is something similar to that. I happen to answer to a question that I'm not responsible for. Something that I'm not, actually I was not part of the beginning of this game, right? But now I happen to be responsible for this one for some reason because I've been appointed to this position now. But anyway, to answer this question, I believe that with the capacity that I have with regard to this UDA and all, I believe that now this, whether there's a vision that is about this, not only about this rich, but also with the poor, and also about the selection of Colombo and not about the other places. Of course, now we can think about a situation where, let's say, for example, we have limited resources, right, for development too. Think about a family, those who have limited income, and maybe they have 4 children. I'm giving this example always to my students. Now in that situation, say for example, the eldest is about doing the last year in school, maybe about in grade 12. The others may be in grade 6, grade 4, grade 3, like that, of course. But in a situation like that, if the family has an income of, let's say, 5,000 rupees, 4,000 rupees, so are we going to, what should be the best scenario? Is it to kind of divide these 4,000 rupees among all of them, 1,000 rupees each? Or is it, the best scenario would be to kind of invest more in the kind of one in the kind of final step and to invest more on him and expecting that he would be looking after this. Once he get a good opportunity, employment opportunity and good income, and will look after the others. So it's just something similar to that. Now Colombo has its own potentials, its own kind of location advantage. And also it has already got some, the competitiveness in the global economy. So in a situation like that, are we going to kind of distribute all these resources among all in an equal basis? Or are we going to kind of invest more in this particular location with whatever the kind of potential that we have now, and to thinking that the benefits will be trickled down into kind of the other areas, and so among all the other classes of the poor, or whatever the other classes of the society. Maybe not 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in time to come.
Right? Are you agreeing with the trickle down approach of some sort that Jagat is talking about here?
I'm trying to find a very straight way to answer that question. So I just want to just kind of take a step back
Yeah.
for a second and respond to what Jagat was highlighting. I think first we need to be clear that the megapolis is not the only place where there will be investment, where there will be planned development. Yes, megapolis is the first chunk we've gone very far ahead on, but we're doing the same kind of initiative for Trincomalee. We're designing the same kind of initiative for for Kandy. We're looking at the same kind of initiative for Jaffna. So we are looking at other strategic enclaves where there are concentrations of people already to go in for planned structured growth. And this is a very long-term view. But this question of the urban poor, I think this is an area that we as a country need to tread very, very carefully. I think it's very important that we craft the cities of the future, keeping in mind that they should be cities for everybody. Country after country after country has failed in attempts to basically put all poor people in a box and build cities for the rich. There's so many cases around the world. So we need to be a bit wary of that and really consciously think about and engage in a much deeper policy debate about how do we integrate the poor into the development story. And it's not necessarily about, the guys at CCC build bigger companies and then maybe, they hire more maids. But it's really about saying, look, how do you move industries up this value chain? How do you generate many more jobs of higher value? How do you get higher quality housing in a way that is accessible to more people? So it's not a physical solution. I mean, housing is a classic one. I know we'll talk about it tomorrow. But I think we need to look very, very sharply and analytically at these and tread carefully. But I think, again, core ethos is important. And core ethos of saying, this should be for every type of citizen. That's quite important.
So I think what's exciting about the vision that's been cast is Harsha is casting it in terms of how it transforms the potential for the nation. I think Nayana is casting a vision in terms of how it transforms the lives of people who are in this region, in Gampaha, Kalutara, in Colombo. And I think Samantaranatunga, who I want to come to, has cast it in terms of what it does for business. Samantha, I have two questions for you, and you can also respond to others. Harsha spoke about improving competitiveness as a critical factor of what the megapolis will do. How do you see the megapolis improving competitiveness of the business landscape specifically? And can you discuss for me at least two problems that you have, that you see businesses facing in the country that could be solved by what we are discussing in terms of the megapolis?
I think I'll take that question first, because it is, I think two of the key issues I think we face today would be, I think skills and investment are two areas I think the private sector faces. And I think a city of the future, the megapolis that we talked about, I think would mean that we have an infrastructure base to which we can attract the best talent. And the best talent would thrive in a situation of that. And that it would also mean that we also will be in the market for, I think, the best possible investment. So I think looking at the concept that is being created gives a chance for, I think, both these issues to be addressed, where we could draw on investment, where we could draw on the best talent. Because if you take a country like Singapore, which was again absolutely resource poor country, took the location, and I think the governance and the mindset, and I think that's one of the things that the minister mentioned. I think a mindset change is again a key factor which makes a success or a failure of a destination. I think we have seen what investment has come there, and what talent it has drawn in the region. So I think these are two issues which can be solved easily. Just commenting on the earlier issue, where we talked about the urban poor.
Yeah.
I think one comment that we have to look at is, I think the fact that we are looking at integration of technology. I think technology is a great leveler of poverty. Because if we can integrate society and teach them technology, I think it can basically, it could be urban-rural divide is there, but it's again something which can basically drive people towards greater prosperity. If we have inclusivity by way of bringing technology to all people. And that's again something, one angle we need to think through.
Mundan, do you want to comment on this idea that technology can be a leveler? And then Nayana, would you like to talk about the transformation in livability? I mean, you said a little bit about green parks. You said that life will be better, but I think we'd like more specificity. Exactly how will life be richer in this megapolis? But let's have Mundan come. Mundan, you don't need to repeat some of the things you said. You talked about technological poverty, but what is specifically the types of technology, apart from accessing things remotely, that you're envisioning in the megapolis?
Specifically at the megapolis,
Yeah.
right? You have free spaces, just empty blocks. People would do a 3D print and entirely slot in a complete home. That's going to basically be the next level. So you just buy a floor space and then you just a shelf space and plug in. So those would require designing. Those would actually require modeling tools, different creative minds, all put together and would drive. And that's the type of technology that would actually come in, and these are the type of buildings that would actually facilitate those.
Okay.
I think the livability question is a very important one because our ambition is to create the most livable enclave in the South Indian Ocean region. But I would say, livability is all the stuff that money, can't buy. So what we're really talking about is a city where all classes of people have access to high quality housing, high quality education, have efficient transport, better quality of air. We have industries that are more environmentally controlled and responsive, more resilient to climate change impacts, such as floods, for example. But a whole suite of things that makes your day-to-day life, not just your wallet, your day-to-day life, a richer experience. But I want to be clear here. I think the megapolis alone cannot do this.
Okay.
The megapolis, as I said, as Harsha said as well, is really a part of a broader strategy. You need to have major upgrades in healthcare to make healthcare accessible to many more people. We need major reform in education to make high quality education accessible to more and more people, not those who just go to the top schools. You need reform in higher education to make sure that a high quality university education is accessible to more people so that more people can actually get into these higher value, higher paying jobs. So I think the entire value chain needs to be looked at, and the megapolis is one piece of it. But make no mistake, I think the end target is not physical. It should not be physical. It really should be, look, do I live in a nice place? Am I happy on a day-to-day basis? Do I have a park to take my kids to? Do my kids get asthma every day? These are the kinds of things you need.
So it's a great set of questions, Nayana, and clearly, in order to manage spaces that way, you need a system, which the soft infrastructure that we spoke about, that regulates things well, regulates air quality, regulates parking, manages public spaces, zones it. And yet the question is, how can the megapolis carry our system forward as well? I'm going to ask the audience a question, because Jagat spoke about information and you spoke about livability. How many of those of you here who are living in Colombo or its suburbs understand or know why you pay the rates that you do? So we all pay rates to the municipality. We pay a certain amount of money every quarter. It's a land tax or a tax on the land and the housing we have. How can anyone raise their hands if they know how that is calculated? Okay. This is something we all pay. We are the most elite and sophisticated people in the country, Nayana.
Yeah.
And we don't know how our land tax is calculated.
Even I don't know, to be really honest.
And
but-
he was Director General Urban Development.
No, but we don't
Authority.
charge it. The municipality does. We charge the development fees.
Yes, of
that's
course, yeah,
very
yeah.
clear. But I wanna push back a little bit on this institutions point. I know
Okay.
Jagat mentioned we have lots of institutions, and we do. But I think the result where we are as a city or as a country and as communities is a result of how we have been regulated by various agencies. And you're absolutely right, Jagat. There are lots of institutions, maybe even too many institutions, and there's very good policies and laws in place. The problem is the synchronization doesn't really happen. Enforcement is very, very difficult. So I would actually argue that we need to really rethink that, because our institutions are actually rather weak. We need to think in a concerted way about strengthening our institutions, fundamentally. I'll give you an example. Now, we're trying to do this light metro. And we have nobody in Sri Lanka that has actually built a light metro.
Yeah.
So to
that's a talent
counterbalance
problem as well.
we need that kind of capacity. We need to build that kind of expertise pool in our cities. We're doing mass scale development that we're planning, but we need fundamental changes in the condominium law to enable mixed use developments of the scale we're talking about. So we need major policy changes, and we need a policy environment that makes it possible for multiple agencies to coordinate. And in a way, the megapolis is about that. And it's a work in progress, but the idea is not to reinvent RDA and UDA and NHDA, but really to get them all to sing, to the same tune.
Yeah, so I'm going to now move to Harsha, because I've taken you all a little bit over time. That's because we started the panel late. I'd like to stop by in about 10 minutes or less. Harshan, one vision is this integration and sophistication of institutions, which we're hearing. The other vision is of doing a megapolis with a mega institution. Doing one institution that can make all the decisions and centralize all the decisions. And Sri Lanka has set up these mega institutions at different times to solve problems. The BOI became a mega institution, and there are other mega institutions being proposed right now. But I'm going to put this in the context of the new government. Right? One of the changes that we had in terms of a new government is we said we are going to have governance, being changed, and we're going to have a more democratic, consultative government system where decisions on development and change are not going to come simply top down. But there's also this other view that something like the megapolis needs, strong top-down decision making. So what is your vision for how people are included, their concerns are listened to and embraced, while at the same time being able to go forward rapidly? Because now you struggle with that problem. That speed sometimes means you don't have time to listen, but listening seems quite important to prevent you from going in the wrong direction. How does the new government, in this new context, think about this challenge for the megapolis and for development?
The development agency has a sunset clause, so it will shut down after a while. The trade agency also will have a sunset clause, it will shut down. I see Rohan seated in the second row. When he drew up the ICT agency, he put a sunset clause there. So ICT agency technically should be dead by now.
That's answering your own question, really.
No, that's the truth. That's true. So we don't go around creating these huge agencies. Nana I saw in his designation, Chief Investment Officer of the Megapolis project. It's a project. it has a ministry to facilitate this work. But I don't think you can put that on us, Nishan.
No, no.
Wait,
So
wait,
I actually
yeah,
come
yeah.
back to the grander vision. This is not a criticism.
No.
But really, how do we posture a new approach to development and how in the
Yeah, so
megapolis?
I'll
Yeah.
come to that, but I had to answer that question. Because otherwise, if it goes unanswered, people may think otherwise. But yes, so this is the Prime Minister said recently, we are the first country to write a constitution on Facebook. We are. Who opened such amount of public consultation before writing a constitution? Our opposition can go to various religious leaders and make various statements. They can criticize the constitution making with people who have already made submissions. I don't know if you saw it. The volume is this thick. It's about 1,000 pages of people giving us their thoughts on how to write the new constitution. Who did that? But at the same time, we've got committees, they got deadlines, and we got to move the process forward. So it is a difficult balance, but I think fundamentally we believe that it is important that we listen to people. I'll give you another example. The Office of the Missing Persons. The contours of the domestic accountability mechanism. We are talking to people. We are talking to people in Matra, we are talking to people in Jaffna. We are talking to them face to face. We are talking to them in focus groups. We are talking to them over the internet. So if there is one thing that we believe in, and that is that we need, to the extent possible, Nishan, to get people's views. And everyone here can participate in writing the Constitution. It's open. You can go to the website. And by law, when we turned the parliament into a constitutional assembly, by law, we have undertaken to ensure that every comment, verbatim, must be reported. There is no one sitting at the back office saying, oh, I don't like this comment, so let's delete it and not put it in the public domain. So that's a kind of a lengthy answer, but I tried to
So you
capture.
see the megapolis planning and development project having the same ethos of actually consulting people about the consequences on their lives as we go forward.
That's a specific. I am not involved in the megapolis. I mean, we have people like Nayan. I'm glad that, we bring people like, there are many, right, who are able to understand the problem and come up with alternate suggestions, talk to people, discuss, debate. We're just having this debate right now whether the light rail should go on the center median of the Parliament Road or not. But we will have that debate, and consultation will happen. Right? I, as the member of Parliament for that area, will have my own views based on what people's views are. So I will bring that to him. And I saw a question, I'm going to take the liberty to answer that, about the public parks. He said, please no politics. 2 years ago, I had cleaner walkways. What happened to that now? I tell you, I went to the new chairman of the UDA. I asked him the question, how come my Valley Park in Navala is not maintained? Because I sent people and asked them, why are these plants dying? Then they said, UDA didn't send me fertilizer. Right? He didn't send me fertilizer, I have asked for 3 months. So I went to the UDA, I asked him, Mr. Chairman, where is my fertilizer? I did. Then he said, look, those days nobody said you have to account for the fertilizer. Now I have to account for the fertilizer. So that is the delay in the fertilizer. But I must thank you, Mr. Chairman. The very next day, the fertilizer arrived. So my plans are get him its life back, and hopefully once we sort out these sort of institutional issues, I think we can have those places maintained better.
Yeah, Lakshman will end in 2-3 minutes. And I want to give Mr. Ranatunga a chance to say one thing about business. And after that, I want to give Nayana 2 minutes to pull it together and say, this is what I've heard and this is what I still believe in the megapolis. Okay, or just to pull our conversation together. Mrs. Ranatunga, you have talked about PPP and businesses joining with government. But we've also, Harsha's been at the forefront in the past of criticizing the escalation of costs in road development projects and other sorts of projects in which the private sector was involved. Now, do you have a vision as the chairman of the chambers for the way business will function and needs to function to deliver the kind of level playing field, to deliver the kind of competitiveness, to deliver the kind of attractive investment environment that will exist when there is confidence that everybody gets the same chance and that private-public partnerships are done in a fair way? What is your vision as chairman of the Ceylon Chambers to drive businesses in that direction?
I think it's a. I think basically I think we have it's a matter of there is a trust deficit which exists between the private and the public sector, and I think to some extent I think it is well placed, and I think to some extent it is misplaced. Always I think what we have to do is, as a country which is a developing country, we have to, there is no way that I think we can cut corners on this issue. If as responsible institutions, the private sector has to own up and play its role and to see that we come up to standard and we come up to scratch where it really matters. I think there the private sector has to play the role which will, I think, then reciprocate in a way that the public sector will build its confidence. Because I don't think one side can take the blame. It is, I think, something which has to do with both sides, and the both sides have to see that they take equal responsibility. I think that the private sector has to play a role, and I think if the private sector plays its role, the public sector, I think, then should own up and reciprocate. So I think it is something which is something I would say it's on balance. But I think there is a role that both parties have to play there.
Thank you very much, Nan. I'm going to give you the last word before we call
Thank
it to a
you.
close. Yeah.
So just to wrap up, here's what I would say. I think clearly this transformation of the Western province, the megapolis idea, if you will, has huge potential to change the way you and I live in this country. And it has huge potential to drive a transformation in not only physical terms, but in multiple ways in our society. But that's not going to come easy. It's going to be a very difficult, very complicated process where you have to balance business, the poor, the rich, various political interests, institutions, you name it. And it's going to be a whole range of people that we need to balance to get a viable, doable outcome. So I would say the megapolis is going to be a journey. It's not going to be a very quick trip. It's going to be a journey that we will be on for the next decade, maybe 2, maybe even 3. And because of that, I think the process we follow in unfolding a transformation of the Western province is going to be as important as the kind of initial milestones that we would see. So I would say we need to focus on process and get that right and go in a measured way.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your talks and your responses. I'm going to hand it back to Lakshman to end the session for us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Nishan. And before I thank our panel, did a wonderful job. I would like to thank once again people who made this possible. MIT, Millennium IT, and London Stock Exchange Group. Been our lead sponsor for almost now 1 year. And Enterprise Connectivity Partner Dialogue Enterprise. Thank you so much, Jerry. Good to have you with us today. And also Port City Colombo Private Limited, Lian and his colleagues, we have been working together for quite some time, and Standard Chartered Bank, Cinnamon Life, Hitachi, Allianz, eFutures, and Jet Holdings, and also all the facilitating organizations and the national partners, University of Bogota. I believe Professor Ananda is somewhere here in the audience, and also RDA, UDA, and Public Utilities Commission, and most importantly, the Western Region Megapolis.
LBR LBO Infrastructure Summit 2016.